I want to say a massive thank you to Jacqui for coming in today. It's so lovely to have you in this sort of setup. Yes. You usually come and you teach at Morris and Sons. Yeah. So Jacqui's teaching Learn to Knit and anything else?
A few little, I've done lace, I've done cables, a few little ones, here and there. Yeah, I love the Learn to Knit though. Learning to knit classes are my favourite,
And you're a local designer as well, which is really fun.
Yeah, well thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you. This is actually the first time we've done a session like this, so I'm hoping to plan more of these. So keep reading our newsletters and we'll be letting you know in the future when we run events like this. But today we're going to find out all about Jacqui and her, I guess, journey into being a knitwear designer. So maybe you can start us off by just telling us, let's start off with, how did you learn to knit? When did you first start knitting and,
thank you.
And what do you love about it?
Because, you know, talking about knitting is easy. Talking about myself is probably like a little bit more scary. I think like most people, I've learnt to knit either from mother or grandmother. For me, it was my grandmother, my Welsh grandmother, taught me how to knit when I was maybe 4 or 5. And I only saw her maybe 3 times in my life because she would only come to Australia very, very rarely. And one of those times it was to teach me how to knit. So, and I still remember the little blue, it was like this colour here, this little blue garter stitch scarf that I made for my teddy. That didn't last long because by the time she left, I hadn't learned how to bind off, so I just pulled the needle out. So I think within a couple of days I'd unravelled it all, but that's my very, very first memory of knitting. And probably for the next 25 years I would, you know, knit garter stitch scarves and that was it. I would dip into it every now and then. I've always been very creative though. For the first part of my life, I was a musician. I was a classical pianist. Yeah, so I studied classical music and that was my creative outlet. But I found that I wasn't great at performing. I was actually quite terrified of playing in front of people. And this was the mid-90s, so there's probably 2 career paths for me at the time, and that was performing, either solo or with groups of people, or teaching, and teaching high schoolers. I mean, you teach preschoolers, that's okay, but I think teaching teenagers is just as terrifying as playing in front of people. So that sort of slowly came to a natural end, my musical career. So that was maybe my early 20s, mid-20s. And then I went on to have children, and with children came this desire to make. So I wanted to make booties and I wanted to make little jackets and things. So that's 18 years ago when I sort of graduated from my garter stitch scarves. Yeah, and then it really ramped up probably about 12, 13 years ago. I actually did a class, my first class I did here at Morris and Sons. So this is when all the wool used to be downstairs in the dungeon and this was all embroidery, and we did a sort of a learn to knit class up here. And that sort of was a trampoline then for me to feeling more confident, and I started making garments and just getting, I guess, more adventurous with my knitting. Yeah.
I love that it's basically come full circle. I love that you did your class at Morris and
Sons,
I know,
and now
you're back
wild?
And you're part of the
I'm
team.
Here
and
now,
it's so good.
Yeah, so here I am. Yeah.
So what made you then take the step into just being knitting as your hobby and something you loved, into designing and taking it to the next level?
So about 10, 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with a autoimmune disease. And for maybe a year, I was really quite ill and I was sort of stuck at home and I wasn't able to get out of the house much. And after a while, at first it was like, well, I get to watch all the TV and read all the books, and I tried to sort of make myself feel better through that. But I found knitting gave me a purpose, like a sense of purpose, a sense of accomplishment. I started, because I had this time, I started doing things I didn't think I could do. So I started making things I didn't think I was good enough to do. I think we all do that when we first, we go, I can't make that, I'm not good enough. But when you just sit down and you practice, it's amazing what you can do. So having that time, which was not nice, but it did mean I was able to sort of grow my love of knitting because I had the time to do it. And I discovered this online world as well. So there was, I think at the time it was mostly Facebook would have these groups of knitters. And so connecting with people online also made me feel less isolated, I guess, because I couldn't go out to meet friends in cafes or restaurants or whatnot. I was really stuck at home. So that was also really nice. And then I found myself modifying patterns. So I'd buy a pattern and I'd start making it, and then I'd be like, well, this doesn't actually suit the yarn I have, or this doesn't suit the colors I have. So I started making little adjustments, and then from that I would start to just make my own things. If I couldn't find what I was looking for, I would just make what I wanted to make. And at the time, the online knitting world had sort of moved over to Instagram, and I was finding quite a few friends in this space as well. And I started sharing what I was making, and they started saying, well, can I make that too? So I was like, well, okay. So that's sort of how I got into designing. It was really from modifying existing designs to going, well, I'll just make what I want to make. And then to people saying, I want to make what you're making too. So I would describe myself as a knitter first and designer second, and the designing. So for example, this assigned pooling design you're wearing, that was never going to be a design. That was just something I was making for myself. I'd bought this yarn, it was a treat for me. But as soon as I shared the sort of the progress online, people were like, oh no, I want to make that. Or, I was like, oh, okay. So that's really how I got into designing. Yeah.
It's so lovely because it's so natural. It just is a natural progression, right? You're doing what you love.
Yeah.
Other people are loving it, and I think that's fantastic. Because I think other people go out there and they try really hard, and it's such a big industry now, and there's lots of people trying to make it. And I think what I love about your designs is I think they really capture like you and your design style, and they're very colourful. There's a really lovely energy to them.
Oh, that's nice.
What inspires you, and what do you love designing?
Yeah. So what inspires me is colour. I love colour. I have most knitters, crocheters will have a terrible habit of buying yarn that maybe they don't need. Maybe they don't actually have a reason for it. So
really? Who does that?
You see it, it looks pretty, you want it. So I've sort of amassed, and it's over quite a period of time, a lovely, beautiful collection of yarn that doesn't always go together though. It's not really cohesive. So a lot of my designing, or what inspires me to design, is to look at what I have. So I look at what I've got. I love to pair, obviously colours is something that I just love doing, and different textures. So what Lorraine's wearing here is alpaca. I love getting a fuzzy yarn and pairing it with maybe a merino, and just creating different textures. That sort of inspires me as well. But figuring out how colours play together is a real passion of mine. And sometimes it doesn't matter, I just throw all the colours together and that's what I want to wear. And I've seen versions of this scarf, for example, that are way more sophisticated, so colours that are sort of, that melt into each other, in a much more cohesive way. But I think that's the beauty of knitting. You can take a design and you make it your own. Yeah. People often ask me how I choose colour, and for me, colour is like flavour. It's like cooking. You've got to have like your base flavours, but then you've also got to add a little bit of, zing, a little bit of, acidity, or sweetness. You've got to balance it, but at the same time, you're constantly trying to figure out, what's going to go together and what's new. You've got to freshen it up, or you want to,
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful for a lot of people. I know we have a lot of customers coming into store, and they maybe have a little bit of trouble picking colours. Like some people find colour really, really hard. So I think it's so lovely that you offer like amazing colour combinations already to inspire people, and then once people feel a bit confident, they can start to, come up with their own.
Look, and to be fair to those people, I mean, this colourway, the original one, I figured out pretty quickly because I'd seen those colours elsewhere. So what inspires me, so other designers, other just art, you see, like if I see colour in nature, or sometimes you just see things that, make you go, oh, I really love that. Every October I want to knit purple things because of the jacaranda trees, it's just different things. But these two second colours, it took me a while to figure it out, because sometimes when you think about it too hard, you yeah, you can overthink it.
And do you do a lot of testing of colours? Like if you're trying to work out, would you put some colours together and then rip it out and then try some other colours? Is there a lot of development that way?
Yes. So I think because I've been doing it for so long, I've got a pretty good idea now, particularly if you're working with, this is a little bit easier when you're working with solid colours. If you're working with variegated or speckled yarns, that can sometimes be a bit challenging because what you see in the skein is not actually what it's going to look like once you've knit it up, because once you roll it up into a ball, you sort of get a more dominant colour coming through that may not have existed when it's just in a long skein. So there has been over the years a bit of experimenting, and sometimes even I will throw some colours together, and when they come together being knitted, the tone changes almost where they touch, and sometimes I don't like that. So and I'll rip it back and start again. Yeah.
And I think that's generally the process of a designer. It's just design development. You've got to try it and not be afraid to rip it out and try something else.
Yeah. And what you see in your head sometimes, like I don't write anything out before I design. This is a very simple. So this design is very, very simple. It is literally knitting 6 rows in different colours. And for the first 3 rows, you slip 2 stitches from your previous row, and that creates this sort of toothy effect, right? So it's literally knitting in the round just over and over and over again with 2 colours, but you get this really fun effect. So I do love a simple design, so something simple, but that the colour or your yarn choice will make it fun. So changing colours is always fun, right? So, okay, I'm on to the next one, potato chip knitting. That's going to make it fun, but then also getting this little effect. It sort of is like fake colour work, right? It's without the having to hold 2 yarns in one row. So
I think it's clever knitting, actually. I do. Yes, very much so.
I think it's really, so for me, one of the really annoying symptoms of my autoimmune disease is brain fog. So brain fog from constant inflammation in my body, and so I found that I couldn't concentrate for a long time on really complex patterns, some of which I really love. So designing things that are simple so that I can sit down and just knit and not have to be following a pattern. That was another reason why I choose to make things that are simple. Simple. Because I think we all love to have something at the end of the day that we can put on a bit of TV or an audio book, or even if like you've got a knitting night that you do with friends and you're talking and knitting, having something that's simple like this but fun, I think is essential.
Great. We've talked a little bit about colour. I'd love to talk to you about technique. What type of stitches, techniques do you love? And is there anything that you stay well away for? You're just like, nah, no, I don't do that.
Well, that's actually a funny question, because I decided when I first started making this, it was going to be a tube scarf. But so this is using 10-ply yarn, and I haven't worked with 10-ply, or like I mostly work with quite fine yarn, and I forgot how heavy and warm it was going to be. So then I realized it has to be something a bit smaller and something that can just sit. I like things that are going to sit around my neck without too much fussing. So I thought, okay, an infinity scarf means it's not going to be massive. It's not going to be too warm, because we probably only have 2 weeks of the year here where we can wear really warm things. So then I realized, okay, so I had already started knitting it, so I'm going to have to join the ends. And one of the things I hate is the Kitchener stitch.
Grafting.
And grafting.
Some people hate that,
I hate it because I just can't memorize it. I can't memorize it.
I can't either. Every time I have to go and pull out the diagram, every time I do it.
So I made the very brave and grown-up decision to, you know what, Jacqui, you're gonna figure it out, and this is gonna be your project to figure it out. And I did put a little video online of me having to, because I didn't start with a provisional cast on in my original one, because I didn't realise I was going to join. So if you don't know what a provisional cast on is, it's when you know you're going to come back down and pick up the stitches. So you add on a cast on that you can remove later, that's easy to remove. So with this one I had to go in and actually pick up the stitches. So for this one I've put in my provisional cast on, and then at the end you take out the cast on and you put the bottom here onto some needles, and then you can join it together through grafting. And yeah, so that's something that I was a little bit scared to do, but in the end it's actually not that bad. It was actually quite easy. So I'd say it's a very straightforward design or pattern in knitting it, in making it, with just a little bit of concentration at the beginning and end to join it seamlessly. But that being said, in the pattern I've included, you know, you can just cast on normally, bind off normally, and seam it together if you're not worried. There's a few options there for whatever sort of stage of knitting you're at, or so that is one technique that scares me, but I'm proud of myself for
Well, thank you so much for confessing, because I think it's very refreshing to us to hear that, you know, you do such beautiful designs and you still have something that challenges you and you've got to work at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are just things we liked. I don't love purling, but it's a necessary evil, I guess, in knitting. And you know, knitting in the round was another way of avoiding purling. I could just knit straight. So,
are you a continental knitter? Or?
No, I'm not. Yeah, so English style. I have tried continental, but it just messed with my my tension too much. I think when you can do something one way, you know, the benefits of the continental style is that you can knit a little bit faster, but that didn't work for me. So
I completely agree. It's whatever works for.
And I guess I think there's been quite a few things as you knit where you're scared to do it or you don't love it, like seaming. I used to hate seaming, but I saw someone once seam with crochet, like crocheting their seams together, and that really sort of made sense to me. And so throughout time, I've sort of pushed myself every now and then to try things that I typically don't love doing. Yeah. Good. But mostly try not to limit myself.
So, what type of fibres do you love to work with the most?
I work with the most is superwash 4-ply. That is what I would work with the most. But when I've been knitting and you love the feel, merino and linen blend is probably one of the most beautiful blends, beautiful yarn that I've probably worked with. Even 100% wool, which is not for everyone. I really enjoyed working with this, and I picked this yarn specifically because I don't know how to describe it. It holds its form really, really nicely. It's not going to, you know, it flattens out a bit with a very gentle block, but you can still get a sense of the different sort of panels of colour in there. I love that I just love that it's sort of juicy and it holds its form. That's what I like about 100% wool. But yeah, so I think the natural fibres really, like, they feel beautiful under your hands. The reason I don't work with them as much is because I'm like a bird that likes shiny things, and a lot of what I've bought over the years are the brightly coloured sort of, you know, superwash merino nylon blends, so for socks and things like that. So that's what I've got at home, so that's what I use. Yeah.
But they work well for everything.
There's nothing wrong with that. But it's that feeling, you know, sometimes when you're knitting with something, and it's not just the process and the rhythm of knitting, it's how it feels under your fingers. And I think, you know, a good single ply or you know, even this feels good. So I think the answer, Lorraine, is all of
everything. Everything. Well, then that sort of leads me on to a very big question for most crafters. How big is your stash? And where do you store it?
So last year in December we moved, and for the first time in a long time, and it was actually quite embarrassing. There's a lot. There is a lot, and
it's for your work.
It's
fine. It's very.
This is what I sound like to my husband when he's like, "Where did this come from?" He's like, "Another box." Which is what has sort of prompted me this year to really focus on, wow, Jacqui, you have so much. Like, you can use what you've got. Yeah. So there's a few boxes in our storage garage, and in my bedroom where I have my knitting desk, I've got just one of those IKEA cabinets, a little bit like one of these little boxy things behind you here, and so I've got maybe several levels of, of yarn, but it's nice because it sits out there and you can see the colours and you can start thinking about, well, so what am I going to do next? It's all there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I would love a room just full of yarn.
Yeah.
So you're obviously doing a lot of designing. Are you still knitting yourself for fun?
Well, it's funny. This was my for fun.
Yes,
this was my
amazing.
for fun.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how sometimes that can just suddenly translate into me sitting here with a lovely group of people to talk about it. Like I tend to have like a serious design, so something quite complex on the go, and then I work on that during the day, and then in the evenings I'll have a pair of socks or something like this that I like to just then work on if I still feel like knitting.
Yeah.
If I still feel like knitting, but I don't tend to have a lot of projects on the go. I would say I've got maybe two or three other designs at home that I'm working on at the moment. Yeah.
Well, you're a busy mum, right?
I know.
It's hard to find the time.
I know. But I like there are knitters out there, like designers that I love, that I wish I had more time to make their stuff. But yeah.
Who do you love? What designers do you look to when you want to make something?
So I think the obvious one is Stephen West. Is just as maybe about 7 years ago I saw him being interviewed, and he was asked a question about being a designer, and he made the comment that, I thought I had to know all the things to be a designer. He said, I was really scared to put myself out there. Like, I thought I needed to know ferrule, I thought I needed to know, cables, I thought I needed to have all the techniques, but it's not really about that. It's just about enjoying what you're doing and creating, and that really struck me because his stuff was it was next level for me, because I was making like little cardigans and matching booties, and I had babies at the time, so I was doing, and then to see these amazing shawls, and it was like artwork. It was just incredible. So I'd say he's still one of my big influences, and I've been able to test knit for him as well, and what he does is, like, his whole business is like an absolute machine.
Oh, it's incredible.
And he still manages to inspire people and inspire knitters. And I don't know if you ever dip into any of his little knitting groups he has around the world, particularly when he's doing his mystery knit-alongs every October. And it's just thousands and thousands of people getting excited about colour choices and design and knitting, and it's so, like, it's fun. So I think I really admire his stuff because it's fun. There are some knitters who are very technical, who are just brilliant. Nancy Marchand, who does the brioche knitting. Nora Gown, is that her name? Who does she does the most beautiful cabling work. So there are a few who really inspire me, but there's only so many hours in the day.
So many, I know. That's why I quite like what Stephen has done, because he sort of set this time every year that if you're into his knits, that's, what is it, it's October, isn't
It's
it?
October.
Like, everyone is ready for October, and that's going to be maybe their one big project of the year. Like, he's been very clever what he's done. Has anyone done the knit along with Stephen? Yeah, I think we've...
It's like Christmas for
it's
knitters.
It's hard not to, isn't it? So you sort of feel like you've got to do it. So I was just going to go back and touch on the fact that you're a teacher at Morrison Sons.
Oh, yeah.
We love having you here as a teacher. Why do you think it's so important to learn craft? Do you feel that craft should be a part of, especially young kids and everybody's life, really?
I think one of the most important things about craft for now, the world we're living in now, is that it forces you to put the phone away. It forces you to put devices down, and you can actually concentrate on using your hands to make and to create. I've worked with children, so I have a child with autism, and I've worked with children who are neurodiverse, and I don't know if you have working with small children, but watching the way that particularly my child with autism and a couple of other kids I've worked with, how the rhythm of knitting and the movement and the repetition of it is very calming. I've read lots of articles on how knitting can lower your blood pressure, crafting keeps you, it's mindful, it keeps you in the moment. But when you actually see it work with children who find it difficult to maybe regulate those feelings, so actually watching it work in real time is beautiful. I just think there's just something about the rhythm of having something in your hands and creating. It's not for everyone. Sometimes it's, it might be art, it might be, my husband's a runner. He's running like 50 kilometres every weekend. Something that's a way of just letting your head sort of think about things, and your hands or your feet are doing all the work. I think there's something really beneficial in that. Yeah.
I think it's something that's been lost, especially I think the most recent generations. Like, I think you used to learn it at school, and you might not have continued it, but at least you did a bit of knowing about it, and maybe it helped you understand where the yarn actually comes from and how a jumper is made. So then that has that effect on the whole fashion and everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic. We obviously love all crafts here at Morris & Sons. Do you have any other crafts or hobbies that you love to do as well as knitting?
Well, I still play music, and I think music and knitting are very similar in a lot of ways, because they're both mathematical. And they're both they're about patterns, so repeating patterns, and you've got a framework. I always say with knitting, I love it because you're given a framework that you can then be creative within that framework. So you're told how many rows or how many stitches, but within that you can choose your colours, you can choose your yarn, you have different ways of expressing yourself within that framework. And music is very similar to that. You've got the notes, you've got the bars, but you can play it how you want to play it, how you feel. You can make it louder, softer. So for me, it's not crafting, but music is my other. I guess if I need a break from knitting, which is not often because I love it, I still have a piano that I can go and sit down and play. Yeah.
Nice. And so you're going to be hanging around for a little bit, so everyone you can have a look at the kit, you can have a touch and feel. I just wanted to ask one more question before I throw it open to the floor for questions. You guys can ask anything you want. You mostly do accessories.
Yes.
You only do accessories. Are you going to think about doing garments, jumpers?
Not at this point. Mostly because cardigan.
It's trickier.
It's much trickier.
Much more complex.
It's much more. Yes. I'm a very tight knitter, so my tension is really tight, and so to be able to design a knitted, like a fitted garment, and to be able to do all the maths involved. I mean, I could do it, but I'm actually not that interested, and I don't wear. I wear accessories. I don't wear a lot of sweaters, and I think there are some great designers already out there doing that. So I don't. But it's mostly because I'm a bit scared. I feel like I would find it difficult to design for different body types, and I think that's really important now. And I think the industry, like a lot of designers, have been a lot more thoughtful now about how their designs are going to fit different body types, because we all, as we get older, things change. It's, things I made for myself, 5-10 years ago no longer fit. It's a little bit more complex, and to be honest, I just love playing with colour and different stitches, and that's my happy place. So
Lovely.
Well, thank you for having me,
Thanks
thank you all for coming out. Like Saturday mornings in Sydney are pretty bananas, so it's really lovely way to just spend a Saturday morning.
I think it's lovely. I can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday morning. And like I said, just keep reading the emails, because we'll be organising more of these types of events, and we'd love to have you along. And if there's anything else you'd like to see us do, just get in touch with me, and we can organise anything really.